the power of doing something every day without stopping. So this came up with like not taking rest days, like the difference that happens with 75 hard versus not, like even before 75 hard, who was I talking to? I don't know. I was talking to someone about 75 hard. They were like, what is the biggest thing you got from it? I go, the biggest thing I got from it is I never took a rest day, right? And I was doing all of those things anyway, right? So but the difference was like sometimes I'd get sore and I just go, I'll just take a rest day. Today's my rest day. But the difference between taking that rest day when I was sore and not doing it because I committed to 75 hard yielded a dramatically different result, even though I was doing all of those things, but just taking a rest day.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Solid. This is episode 36. Jeff and I today talk about a lot of different things that I think went really well. I think you'll really enjoy it. We talk about everything from the environment that you come into, allowing other people to either influence you or you becoming the influencer, which way you'd rather be, as well as just what real change is versus what fake change is. Just a bunch of different topics here, how to grow in your wisdom and your stature and all of that. So excited to bring this episode to you. If you would, please make sure you subscribe and like our podcast. That helps get out to more people. If you're finding value in this, share it with other people. And we look forward to bringing more episodes in the future. So stay solid. I'm
excited about the topic on today's, podcast and what we're going to cover. I think, man, I just a lot have been talking to a lot of people the last week, and the economy is changing. The market is changing, and I love during these times as the market changes and there's more uncertainty, because it starts weeding out those who have maybe just have a work ethic, but they don't really have a lot of great skills, or they haven't worked on their craft. They haven't become professionals yet. However, they maybe had a little bit of success, but it was really because the market has done well, especially like investors the last 10 years. People that started doing mortgages in 2011, 2012. So they've been doing it a decade, but they've never actually been through any the rates have been 3%, 4%, 5% for them the entire time. They don't know what it's like, right?
Right, exactly.
So now to see this stuff change really starts making you look at, it's like if you drain a lake, you start seeing the crap inside of it, and I think that's kind of what's starting to happen in the marketplace. And I think it would be good, whether it's in a business and in our families and life during challenging times or uncertainty, there's just things that matter when it comes to success. And so,
agreed.
Yeah, man, I wanted to, kind of bring up a couple of these points and just get your thoughts on them. One of the points that I had was that I feel like a lot of people, when they're chasing success in anything, right, whether it's familial success or in their spiritual life or business. We see this a lot because business is so like outwardly focused, which I don't know if that's, I don't think that's necessarily the best thing, but we see it a lot there. So no matter what area of our lives that we're trying to chase success in, I think what happens a lot of times is people place so much value on the opinion of what others think about them versus what's in front of them. Like one of the things that come to mind for me when I say that, and again, I want to get your thoughts on this, but I've been not just reading, but studying Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. One of my favorite parts in that book is he says, look, if he gives reasons like, first of all, why you should believe in God, and then the alternative, right? If you don't believe in God, then do whatever you want, whatever. He goes, but the fact is there is a God, and then gives all these reasons why. So he's setting it up, and then he goes, then once you're in this place, there's so many people say, oh, this is what God called me to do. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing this massively, but he says something to the effect of, does a bee complain about making honey? Does a grape complain about growing on a vine? He goes, no, they just do what they're supposed to do because that's their place in nature. Right? And I think a lot of times people are so worried about what other people think about them or the way other people perceive them, rather than just being the best they can be at where they're at in life at that moment, right? So what's your because obviously I've watched you do a phenomenal job of this. I think this is why people have looked at you in the past and go, Brandon's a robot, Brandon's, you know what I mean? But I think a lot of it has to do with you just be willing to do what's in front of you, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, appreciate that. Nice compliment. I remember even serving my church mission, and my companions that were with me, like when we got home, years later, would say, "Man, I always remember how you would just go out and teach what you believed. You taught what you believed, and you didn't worry about what other people thought of you." And what that means is, I mean, I do care what people think about me, but I don't at the same time. And
well, you care about your reputation,
correct.
Just not their opinions.
There's a difference. Yes, there's a difference. So I think, really, we all have our past experiences that we remember and think about, and then we have the future that we are maybe thinking of what we'd like to have, or the future's not even real, right? It's our perception of what we would like to make happen, or it's all speculation, really, right?
Yep.
And I think, and I'm actually reading a book right now that is called Zero Limits. Let me make sure I'm saying that.
Yep, that's right.
Right, that's right. And it talks about this actually, and it's really resonating with me because it talks about how if we as human beings are really gonna be able to be effective in creating what we're supposed to create, we have to have the ability to, we all have our past, and our subconscious is going to remember that past or whatever, right? But he talks about how when you have a computer and it's programmed to do a certain thing, and then you want to delete something off that computer, you delete it, where does it go?
To the trash.
It goes to the trash bin. It's still in the trash bin, right? And so it's still there. Yeah. And that's what we do sometimes. We'll delete it, but it's still in our trash bin, right? And you got to empty that trash bin. And so it takes a tremendous amount of, I think, just awareness and focus on being able to really get to, he calls it net zero, meaning you're genuinely done with the past. It's gone. It's deleted. And you're not concerned about the future right now. You know the future's there, but but you get yourself into that present moment. And I think that for me, when I was, building my business, and when you came into my business, right, we were having some success. We were young, and I think we were earning, good money. We were earning probably 20, 30 grand a month when you joined, right? And I remember that time where, and I think this all stemmed from a childhood of learning how to go to work, and just go. I would just show up, just like you're doing with the cold plunge. I would just show up and get my duties done, get my job done.
Yep.
And not think about too much. I mean, I knew the weekend was coming, right? So I'd have a little bit of a break. But I don't know. I don't know why, but I just was, I think, programmed to focus on that task at hand. So when I was building my business, I mean, I had my task at hand every day, which was getting 3 to 5 new names and numbers a day, calling within 24 hours to set up appointments with them. I knew some would say yes, some would say no. But I knew over the course of doing that on a daily basis that the results would start to come from that, because I did have a blueprint of what it took to win in our business. I had a leader, Brendan Merton. I was under him in the company, and he had a very clear track record of hiring 2 people a month for 2 years and making a 6-figure income by the end of his second year. I was 22 years old when I saw that track record. And so I looked at that and I go, okay, I've just got to make sure I'm recruiting 2 directs a month. In order to do that, I need to get 3 to 5 names every day, and I'll recruit 2 to 4 directs in a month. And if I do that, I'll make $100 grand by the end of my second year. So I knew what I needed to do, and I knew I knew the end goal. Yep. But then I didn't think about that so much. I don't know. I guess I set myself up and programmed myself to just do it, whether I felt like it or not.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think I'm very fortunate to learn that early on with good parents that taught me how to work hard.
Yeah.
Good family, not just my parents, but uncles. I mean, I've got a really strong heritage of family that has all done this. So I don't know. I think it's just something that is
you had it modeled in your life. So it was kind of just who you are. Which I'm grateful for that, because it impacted my life, and I didn't necessarily have that modeled. However, I think I've taken on some of those traits, some of it starting with boxing, and then leading some of those things into business as well. I think one of the things you said there that I just want to clarify is when we talk about deleting, past. A lot of people have trauma from it because it's the emotional response that they have, right? If we learn from it but we're not emotionally tied to those things, right?
Yep.
So it's not necessarily we're deleting what happened, is we're deleting the emotional response.
Yeah, I'm glad you're clarifying that.
To those.
Because we do need to learn from our past.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, I think, and you're talking about your past right now, right? And those things it's just, and it wasn't all cozy all the time, right? It's just, there's going to be things. It's like today we were at Aspen had a gymnastics competition, and we were talking because we were there, and Kelsey used to do gymnastics with her friend, Brianna, and Brianna's mom was talking. She was telling Karen, because Karen was there as well. She goes, "Isn't it crazy now we're watching our grandchildren instead of our daughters together?" Right? And she goes, "It's so awesome to see your family." And she's talking about how all of her kids have done really well. They've all chosen good husbands, and she said, "I don't know why it happened." I said, "I do. Is look at your guys' example." And I can see, it's obvious to me why their daughters chose the men they chose and why their lives is, because if you look at the parents, they have that example, right?
Yes.
And so not all of us are blessed to have those things. However, when they are modeled, I think it's important for us to know it and then continue those patterns, right?
Yep.
But when they're not, to find people that have them, and then those things that we need to model the correct behavior, not behavior that doesn't help us win, right?
Yeah, because I don't know how I would be, man. If I grew up in a situation kind of like how you grew up, I try to imagine how would I have turned out in that situation. I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, to me, even like anytime I would see friends do something that was bad, if I saw somebody smoking or doing drugs or, even talking, in a derogatory way or telling bad jokes or talking about girls in a bad way, to me, it was a very, it would just turn me off.
Yeah.
And if I was in an environment where that was accepted more back then, I wonder if I would have been more comfortable to be around that,
Yeah, hard to say. But I think it goes back to what I said at the beginning is like, what do you place value on, right? Mm-hmm. So many people place value on the opinions of the wrong people, and a lot of those people are. And I, for me, I always felt like you've been such a leader that, the value that you put, today I posted on social media. I said, for all you men out there that are driving exotic or luxury cars and your wives are driving around in used minivans, right? That car doesn't make you look like more of a man. It doesn't make you look stronger to other successful people. It actually makes you look weaker. It actually makes you look insecure, right? If your wife's driving around in a 10-year-old minivan and that's fine if she wants to drive, right?
Yeah.
We live in Southern Utah. There's a lot of moms that want a minivan, right? But she don't want a 10-year-old one when you're driving a brand new exotic car. You know what I mean? And I think that's what is it, because to me, I look at those guys and it just ran into that situation this morning, right? But I look at those guys and I just go, for the way I feel about it is that he places more value on the opinions of others than he does about the safety, security, and how his family feels.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Right? And so, it's his life. He can do whatever he wants with it. But just for me, I want my wife to be confident, and if I can do anything to make her feel better, then that's what I would, long before I do, right? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that servant mentality is like, that's what I'm here for, you know, is to provide for my family, provide a great life, provide, better. And the value that I place on the opinion that matters to me the most is one, God, and second, my family, and then if their opinions, they matter the most, then what are the things that I'm going to do on a daily basis and uncomfortable things that really just benefit their lives the most?
Yeah.
And for me as a man, one of those things is providing a great life, right?
You got me thinking deeply, man. I'm like sitting here thinking about this because I've strayed from who I really am based on who I've been around.
Yeah.
I think we all have.
Everybody, yeah.
And still do. And, if I spend time with somebody who, does certain things and they accept me and I want to be a part of that crowd, I might kind of change a little bit to adapt to that. And I do that.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit different maybe at church than I am in real life. And I don't want to be. I don't mean to be.
Right.
But I think there's when I go to church and I'm around that environment, I want to be I want to try to be better, of course.
Yeah, environments influence us. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And then, I mean, hopefully when I go out into the world, I take that with me, but I mean, I don't. I mean, I fall short of this all the time. So you just got me thinking about this, like, and I the older I get, the more I'm trying to be, hey, just be who you are, no matter who you're with, and they're going to accept you, because all my friends and family, they love me no matter what. I know that.
Yeah, that's why they're your friends and family.
So why do I feel like sometimes, or maybe not even feel like it? Maybe why do I lower my, I don't know if standards are the right word, but maybe I cuss a little more with somebody than I mean, I don't try to cuss very often at all, but I might cuss a little more with somebody over here than someone, and I shouldn't cuss at all. But just reality. I mean, it's just
it's humans trying to get better, right?
I guess, yeah.
And I think we're all the same way. Like I said it before we get started, I think a lot of this stuff is notes that I write down, thinking like, man, I know I could do better, but then I see these things, and then I just try to use experience or situations to really like reflect on, what do I have to do to become a better man, right?
Yep.
And that takes me to my next point is, so many people want the prize, but they're always negotiating the price. And I think that as you're talking about this and changing our environment, changing the situation, our perspective in those environments, is so often we enter this thing because we have a goal or whatever. I remember first in financial services, it was like, oh my gosh, man, I could drive a Ferrari. Well, I could have bought a Ferrari so many times, a long time ago. I never bought a Ferrari, right? Because although that genuinely was the thing that drove me up front, right? Is, man, I could get a Ferrari here. And then over time, it was like that no longer was the prize I was seeking, but it didn't change my willingness to pay the price. So paying that price to me was almost like, it's like the cold plunge challenge. It's just, I said I was going to do it. And I don't talk, or I don't go into there and like feel the water. Oh my gosh, is it cold today? What's the weather outside? I don't really care, right? It's not that it's more it's definitely more uncomfortable when it's cold outside.
Oh yeah.
It's definitely a lot more challenging. It's definitely a lot more challenging if you've had a long day or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different variables that change the emotion behind entering that cold water. And so I don't ever think it gets easy. However, it definitely doesn't change my commitment. So these outside circumstances don't change the price that I planned on paying originally.
You made the decision already.
Yeah.
It's a decision. It's done. Decide, right? You put to death all the other options.
Yeah.
That's what side means, right? Suicide, homicide, right? So you've decided you're going to do it. And it doesn't matter if it's snowing outside and 20 degrees. And if the cold plunge was outside, I'm probably going to put one right here in my breezeway.
Yep.
And when it's cold outside, I mean, if I make the decision I'm just going to do it every day, then who cares how cold it is or how hot it is? That doesn't matter. I'm going to get in that cold water. And
exactly.
The cold water doesn't change.
Yeah, exactly.
40 degrees is 40 degrees, no matter what the outside is, right?
Right. And and discipline is doing that thing, right? It's confronting and doing the thing you made a decision to do a long time before. I remember I heard this quote early on in my career, something like commitment is following through on the promises you made long after the emotion in which you made them under has left.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of times we get into these environments which are awesome. I love motivation. I love being in environments where everybody's fired up.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's where people make big decisions.
But that's not always going to be the case.
Right. No. But what separates the winners from the also-rans are the people that have enough discipline to continue on with that commitment regardless of outside circumstances. And so for me, I would like to hear, we've both worked with so many people, and we watch these people with so much talent and so much skill, and maybe they start doing all the right things, and they start having some success. Maybe they start, they finally start achieving some income milestones, or they get some promotions, they start building a little business, and then it's almost like because of that, they start negotiating the price. Right? They start counting the traumatic experiences in the past, but I did this and I did this and I did this, so I should be further, right? Rather than just saying, here's what I committed to do. I'm grateful I'm here. I woke up today and I'm going to be the best me, and this is who I am, right? It's not what I do, but it's who I am, and I am a person who fulfills my commitments.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're kind of getting at here a little bit is, as human beings, we're always wanting that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And maybe when we're starting off in life or in business or in a career, we start to have those little bit of successes, and you get that dopamine hit. It feels good, so you do it more and more and more, and then you get to a place where, you start making maybe really good money, maybe whatever that is to somebody, maybe 30, 40, 50 grand a month. I mean, that's a lot of money for most people, right?
Yeah,
So that's a lot of money. And I would say maybe 30 to 60,000 a month in income is all fairly feels about the same, right?
Yep.
And so you'd be easy to get into that spot. And now you're not feeling that same dopamine hit because you're used to it, right? And I was it you that posted the other day about seek real dopamine? Somebody posted something I saw. It was really good.
No, I don't think it was me. No.
But it basically was saying maybe it was Ryan Lelf. We should be chasing real dopamine, sunlight, ice baths,
walks in nature,
true growth, walks in nature, all those types of things.
Hugging our family.
Yes, not caffeine or overeating or eat good foods, And if we chase if we can train ourselves, really, I think get in shape for life. People always ask, what are you working out so hard for? What are you training for? I just want to be in shape for life, mentally, physically, spiritually. It's all those areas, so that when these tough challenges come or when I start having success, I don't plateau. I continue to build upon that. And I mean, I've fallen into that trap, where you start having success and you go, you start negotiating the price. And I did that already. I'm not doing that again. And that's a big red flag that says, okay, I need to make sure that what am I really here for? I can't, if I stop, that's just going to lead to depression and, feel lousy.
Yeah. I think that mentality is a victim mentality.
Yeah.
Right. Is like, man, I did all this or whatever. And so I shouldn't have to, or I shouldn't. And we've all been there. I mean, I've been there too, but it's that victim mentality. And it's like, you can't continue to grow while you have a victim mentality.
Nope.
It doesn't exist.
Nope. Yeah. And then you're out of control. When you play the victim, you're not in control, and that's a choice. You can change that right away. There might have been something that happened to you that you feel was out of your control, but what element did you play in it, right? And change that element and do what you can to get better.
Yeah, and I think even the circumstance, maybe you weren't in control of the circumstance, but you are always in control of your response to it.
Yeah.
Always. Like, that is the one thing we control. We control our emotions, right? Our emotions are 100% in our control. This modern day, like, self-care and it's okay to not be okay. Says who? Change your emotions.
Yeah.
Like, we can change our thoughts.
Sure.
And yeah, it's okay to have those hiccups, and there's, everybody has them, but it's definitely not okay to stay a victim. Right?
Don't stay there. Yeah, exactly.
So we just have to learn to change our emotions and learn to say, hey, I'm in control of my response to this situation. And I think continuously practicing that is just like working out, right? Over time, as you learn to control it, learn to control your response, have a more positive response, you get stronger and stronger and stronger mentally. Just like you get stronger doing squats or bench press or running.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We're learning the New Testament this year in Sunday school. So we're in like Luke 2 right now, right? And talk about obviously Jesus' birth, but there's Luke 2:52, the very last verse in Luke, says that Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor of God and man. Just like all of us, right? He went through everything and knows everything that we're going through and has felt everything we're going through. And I look at that, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to increase in wisdom, So that's like life and experiences, and wisdom I think comes from God, and then stature, maybe our physical, strength. And I'm sure Jesus was very physically strong, and otherwise he wouldn't have been able to do what he did and accomplish what he accomplished. And
like we were talking the other day, flipping over tables, like how heavy a table used to be,
Yeah, man. And Garden of Gethsemane and all that, and the cross and everything had to go through with all of that and be able to have his mental state about him to do everything he did, right? And obviously he was God too, but that's what I love about that is it's relatable. Because he had to grow up. I don't think Jesus really fully understood who he was until he was starting his ministry. I think he had to learn that himself. I mean, he was God's son and all that, but he learned that later, right? So, and then he was always going about his father's business, right? Like his parents, his mom, and hey, we couldn't find you for a few days. Where have you been, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just going about my father's business.
Yep.
And hopefully that's what we're doing is if we can't be found by someone, or your wife should never wonder, hey, she can wonder where you're at, but she should never wonder if you're doing something wrong, right? Because you're going to go out, you're out doing good in the world. And so anyway, I think just all this stuff that we're talking about here, I think progression. I think progression is the key to joy and happiness.
Yes.
Always being progressing, and you got
the opposite of depression.
Yeah,
and the cure to depression is progression.
Yeah, and we were talking about like no rest days type mentality, And I remember hunting as a young boy and thinking about the wild animals out there.
Yeah.
And how they don't get a rest day. Like every day they gotta.
Your predators don't take a day off.
They don't take a day off, and so I always thought about how tough they were, right? And I think that as I started to work out earlier in high school and all that, I kind of thought about that. Like, okay, if wild animals never have a rest day, I don't need a rest day. I can also get to where I'm just always getting better. I'm always improving. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have time to recover. I mean, Animals recover. They still have to they have to sleep. They have to take a rest. I mean, the rut just got over for the mule deer and they're like all rutted out and tired and recovering. But guess what else is happening? Lions are killing them because they're too wore out, right?
Yep.
So don't overindulge either, right?
Exactly.
So we got to do the same thing. We got to be wise.
Yeah.
So
I think something you just said there about like our wives, I think I want to bring that up because I think that happens a lot. And it goes back to this discipline and doing what you said you were going to do and commitment. I think if our spouses see that happening, whether, like in our case, our wives or, if there's a female listening to her husband or something like that, if they're watching you fulfill your commitments and they're watching you be disciplined en route to that victory or that process, it erases a lot of doubt that people have.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because naturally, if you're not focused or they see, different errors along the way and you're more consistent in those than you are consistent in the disciplines that you committed to, then there's obviously going to be doubt.
Well, how many times did you have someone in your business where the husband would say, my wife just isn't supporting me? How often did that happen?
All the time.
And why was that the case?
Because they weren't doing what they said they were going to do.
Exactly. That's all it is, right?
Half the time that dude would be sitting at the office on Facebook all day.
Yeah.
And then his wife would say, man, what do I need to do to help him or what? And it's just like he just ain't doing anything.
It's like somebody who blames their wife. My wife doesn't show me enough affection or whatever. Well, there's probably a reason for that.
Right.
I think this topic of intimacy is very misunderstood in the world. I think people think that intimacy means sex, and it doesn't. It might lead to that.
Yeah.
But that is not what it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's very misunderstood on both sides, men and women's sides. And this is my opinion. I think it's a big problem in the world today. Whereas, there's a lot of women out there that feel like they've got to give their man intimacy, thinking it's sex. And there's a lot of men thinking, that's right, I need that. And this misconception of they need that, it just isn't. It isn't a fact.
Right.
You're not going to die if you don't have it.
Right.
What everybody is searching for, men and women, is the intimacy of connection, emotionally, spiritually, all the stuff we're talking about here, and then all the other stuff is automatic, right?
Yeah.
So I want my wife to. And I think about this all the time. I go, okay, when I feel like my wife isn't as close to me as I would like her to be, I used to blame her, in my mind, right? And get frustrated and go, oh, the flame is out, right?
Why don't you do this? Or why don't you do more of that?
Yeah, I need you to do more of this for me. And that's just not the solution. That's the victim mentality we're talking about, right? So I'm talking about marriage right now, but this happens in business and everything else, right?
It does, yeah.
So if I'm learning this, I'm getting better at it, I think, where I go, okay, that's a indication that I've got to correct my path.
Yep.
And I've got to get better, and I've got to show up better. I've got to show up better as a husband. I've got to show up better as a father and be there and be present, because I'm a guy. I'm not, there's jokes all the time, and there's a lot of truth to it for me sometimes, where she's telling me something important, and then I'll be like, oh, what did you just say?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Like there's a meme going around right now where how my brain works when my wife tells me something important, and it comes out of the printer and goes straight into the shredder. I'm like, crap, that's me all the time. Yeah. So if you're doing those things, your wife's probably not going to feel very affectionate towards you, right?
Yeah, because it's not making her feel valued.
Yeah. This is big stuff that I wish I would have really understood early in my life, right?
Yeah.
And again, the world, I think is very confused on that topic. And
Definitely.
I think it's causing a bunch of issues in marriages and affairs that are happening all over because people think, oh, I don't have intimacy in my marriage, thinking it's something that it's not.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's on you, brother. It's on you, sister. You guys got to.
Yeah. Well, it's like that whole thing, you know, a lot of times you'll see someone, they'll get a divorce and, you know, I'm a man, so I notice it more with women, but all of a sudden she'll lose weight and get in good shape and be at the gym every day and dressing better and getting ready in the morning and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, maybe if you would have done some of that stuff before, maybe you wouldn't be in the situation you're in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe. And the same thing with the guys. You watch guys, how often you watch a guy get married and it goes, oh, I'm 30 or I'm 40, so it's okay to have, you know, a dad bod or whatever. Like, I'm sorry. I don't agree with any justification of why it's okay for you to be and not a good example.
Not doing your best.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
not genuinely giving your best.
yeah, just being better. Like,
Yeah.
just wake up every day and do more, because it doesn't just impact your marriage, but it also impacts the example you provide for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the other day, I don't know if you saw I posted Aspen and Rome both get in the cold plunge.
Yes.
We do not ask them to do it. Like, we never say, hey, do you want to get in a cold plunge? Like,
You're raising a bunch of psychopaths, dude.
dude, it's just like, it's like, you know, they just see us do it every day.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And Zion wants to get in. I'm like, I just don't think he's quite ready yet. You know, he's only 4, and he's like, Dad, can I do it? Dad, can I do it? Dad, can I do it? I'm just like, you're not ready yet. But it has nothing to do with us asking. It has everything to do with them watching us just try to get better. But I think the same thing is when it comes to marriages. Like, again, whose value do you place the opinion on, right? And for me, it's my family, and the way I continue to strengthen that is by surrounding myself or allowing people that have great marriages to influence my thoughts. You know, and a lot of times what happens is people will have neighbors or people in their community, and maybe you live in a community that doesn't match your dreams, where you're living doesn't match your dream life, and you have this dream of living in a better community or a better neighborhood or whatever, which I can relate to that a lot.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to allow those people to influence me. You know, like people say, oh, well, you changed. Yes, that was the exact goal. Like, I couldn't wait to get out of here. You know, it's not like I'm bragging about living here. In fact, I didn't want to live here. Yes, this is where I'm from. Yes, I'll never forget where I'm from. But every single day, I could not wait to leave. And so the way I changed my life was by placing more value on the opinions of the people's lives that I truly wanted, not the ones that made me feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, Lexi was a guest speaker on her sister's podcast a few weeks ago, and this is, you know, speaking to me a bunch what you're talking about here, because earlier on in my business, I was so worried about what I knew everybody's watching us, right? And so in my mind, we have to put on this perfect picture of who we really are.
We live in a glass house kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she would get up and speak, and she would be very real. And I'd go, hey, you probably should be careful with that, you know, when you say that. And like we got an image to uphold, and because I was trapped in this. And I still do it today. I still get trapped in this, worry about what other people think about me, for sure. Yeah. And I think this is so important, because, you know, if we're really working on ourselves and changing, it's like a quiet change, right? And I was talking to Ryan Leff about this yesterday, and I basically said, real change is quiet, fake change is typically loud, right? So people that say they're changing and do, a lot of times they're not really changing. They're saying, versus someone who's truly changing usually doesn't say anything. Yeah. You just see a difference in them over time. Yep. And sometimes you don't see them for months or years, and all of a sudden you meet them again and you go, oh, like Ryan Leff. Like, I don't keep bringing him up because he's been on a podcast before, but he's one that I haven't talked to in years, and all of a sudden I'm like, dude, you were a different guy than you were 5, 10, 15 years ago. Yes. You know, so that internal, you're not worried about everybody else's thing. You know the work you got to do, and it's all the internal stuff.
We also see it the opposite way, though, too.
True.
Right? Where like Ryan, he shows up and he's like, man, you're a different guy. Like, look how much better you are. But, dude, I moved away from St. George for 15 years. And I see people that I knew 15 years ago, and it's like they're in the exact same spot, but they're more overweight. They just don't, you know, they're older. They, you know, and so they did the exact opposite. You know, so it happens both ways. And one of them's intentional, and the other one is not. You know, if you want to grow, you've got to be intentional. If you want to become a better man or a better woman, you want to have a better life, you've got to be intentional about it. But when you're saying loud, I think it's true because a lot of times people are loud about the things that they want to do because they're almost like trying to convince themselves by convincing everybody else around them. Rather than just being convinced, I'm going to be the best version of me today. I'm going to give it everything I've got. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. Yesterday, it was a busy day for me. And, Aspen was getting ready for this gymnastics competition today, and we got family coming in town this weekend, and we just put an offer on this house, and, we got all this stuff happening. It was busy. There was a lot of stuff. And it was like I had an hour, like almost to the minute on, I had to work out, do a cold plunge, this stuff that I committed to doing every day. And it was like, I could do it later tonight. But he's like, you know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. It wasn't the perfect timing, but then I felt good afterwards, and there have been times where I'm just like, I'll just do it later. And then I still do it later, but I don't feel as good as when I just do the things that I committed to do early on, regardless of how it felt.
Yeah. There's almost a little bit of shame. Like, man, I did it, but I was supposed to, but you still did it.
It's self-accountability though, right? Like I think a lot of people will let themselves off the hook, and sometimes I feel like I'm harder on myself than anybody would be. But I feel like that's because in order for me to grow, I have to. Like, who else is going to hold me accountable long term besides me?
Yeah.
Kelsey said this the other night. We were having dinner. She goes, she just said it randomly. And she goes, the difference between people that win and people that lose? She goes, winners are self-accountable people. They hold themselves accountable. They don't need anybody else to motivate them. She goes, there are some people that will win and have some success that need someone to hold them accountable, make sure they're around. What are you doing?
Very limited success, though.
Exactly.
Very limited.
Yes.
And very short term.
And it's always because of somebody else that is around that is holding accountable. But if you're going to be a leader,
somebody asks me to hold them accountable, I'm like, you're not, that's not where it's at.
It's a never-ending battle for a leader, right? If you are a leader and someone says that, it's like that will be a never-ending saga, versus, guys like us. I know how you are too, and you never needed to hold me accountable. Yeah, it wasn't.
Well, here's your accountability, right? You look at yourself in the mirror, and you know dang well whether you're doing it or not.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to be careful with affirmations, right? People go, you need to say your affirmations out loud every day. Here's the problem with affirmations if you're not careful, is if you're saying affirmations that you are not doing, all you're doing is reinforcing a lie to your soul, and it actually erodes your soul. So instead of saying, maybe you're out of shape and you're saying, I'm in great shape, but you're not in great shape, that's a lie. So hey, maybe, why am I so motivated to get in good shape? That would be a better way to say that, right? Why am I so motivated to get in? It allows your brain.
I am motivated to get in great shape.
I am motivated to get in good shape. Or maybe you're not, though. And if you're not, then you shouldn't say that either. So maybe you should just say, why am I going to do what it takes to get in good shape? And it changed a little bit, right? Because you just have to be careful with those affirmations that you're not lying to yourself because your soul knows. And that's accountability.
And you feel like a fraud,
Yeah, exactly. So if you'll really get good at that part right there and stop lying to yourself, and I think there's probably, you and I think, maybe I've had people say this to me, like, man, it's like almost intimidating to be around you because, and this is not good, by the way. This is not a good trait that I need to, this is not what I want people to think. But I've had people say this to me before, man, you're just so good. You just do everything just perfect. I'm like, I blew it. Because that's not what I want you to feel. Because I think there's people that might listen in and take that. And I think we, hopefully we do a good job of this. I think we do of, if you're out there and there's people right now that are just down and out and they hear some of this stuff and they're just like, I can never, I'm not even going to try. Because ice baths, are you kidding me? You guys are getting into martial arts. What? You guys go run, you guys go run with a weighted 20-pound, or you're talking about, being better for your wife and all that. And they're just totally down and out. And I think that, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, but I really believe that if we're on the right path in life, it's most likely going to be uphill. But that doesn't mean it needs to be hard. Okay. Now it's a challenge, but this is why we're talking about getting in shape. Like when you're in shape, I remember when I was training for Ironman, and then after that, I loved road biking. and I loved climbing. I loved climbing the canyons up in northern Utah, like up to Snowbird, and I could climb like all the canyons in a ride, like it's 100 miles, and do it all in like 5-6 hours, and then I'd feel great after.
Yeah.
And I got myself to a point where when I was going, I loved climbing. Like I would just get into this groove, and I was sweating, and it was hard, and my heartbeat was probably 170 for half hour, 40 minutes, long time, right? And but I just, even though it was uphill, it almost gave me energy. It almost, and I almost propelled. So you can get yourself to that place over time. So ask yourself, man, it's hard right now. It probably means you're on the right path.
Yep.
Probably means you need to work on getting in better shape.
Yep.
Right. I used to always say, get in shape for success. Mm-hmm. Mentally, you got to start reading those books. You want to get in shape, start showing up at the gym. Jefferson Rogers said he originally started going to the gym and he'd just go and stretch for a half an hour. Yeah. Didn't even lift a weight.
Yep.
Originally, he just show up and like lay on the floor, right?
Yep.
But he got there.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, if you're on the right path, it's always uphill. Do you agree with that? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the statement for sure. There's always,
and you can disagree, by the way.
Yeah, I know for sure. Yeah, I think in route to success, it starts with desire. And if somebody's listening to this, it tells me they have desire. And that's the one thing I think you can never teach somebody is desire. Like you can't implant desire in somebody. And so if somebody's feeling that way, like, dang, I just don't know, it just tells me you have desire. And I definitely don't ever want to come off as the person who decreases hope in somebody. I think it's my job as a leader to increase hope and belief in people. Mm-hmm. And so I always want to do that. And that's why I think being vulnerable I used to feel that way too. Like we have to have this perfect example. And, if I wasn't on an appointment, nobody can know. And really because I was allowing people who I put value on their opinions. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, hey, that's not the most important opinion that matters, right? The opinion of the people that committed to me, the people that are following me, it's their life that's important. I made a commitment to them. They made a commitment to me. I need to deliver on it. And I need to deliver on the thing that I promised. I'm going to increase hope and belief, right? And I need to do that through my example. I can't control their behavior. I can only control my example, right? And so I think in route to success, when it's whether it's physical fitness, if it's uncomfortable and it's hurting, good, you're growing, right? And all you need to do is change your perception about how pain feels, right? Because a lot of times the reason why people, when they're going through that pain, is they're looking forward to when they don't feel it anymore, rather than just saying, you know what, I'm going to start falling in love with this because I know it's change, I know it's growth. And so that's what I've tried to do when it comes to fitness. It's almost like I feel like, for me, that's when I know I'm getting the strongest. If I'm going to do 8 reps and I'm going to, try to hit my personal record today doing squats, it's going to take everything inside of me. But if I stop at 6 because it's hard and I don't do the other 2, I'm never going to grow to be able to do more.
Yeah.
So were the previous 6 pointless? No, but it definitely didn't help me grow. And so I'm not going to feel as good as if I push through. So I almost look forward to that moment where I go, this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. So I try to get myself in that place because I've learned that that's where all growth happens. Mm-hmm. Even in challenges, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's with my wife or even my kids, right? If you have kids, you have all these perspectives of how you're going to raise your kids and what you're going to do. And I would never let my kids do that. Like, how many times did we say that before we'd have kids? If I had kids, I would never let them do that. Yep. And then you have kids and you're like, I know why that other person's kids did that, so you have these different challenges through life, and it's always our perspective. So I guess what I would encourage people to do if they are down and out and they're really feeling like, man, how do I just get inspired? Well, first of all, you should be excited you have desire. That's why you're listening to this. Yep. And then you have a desire to change, whether it's fitness or your marriage or whatever it may be. And then know that it's how you perceive that challenge. It's how you perceive the pain of growth, of whether or not you're going to continue to pursue it. Because if you're looking forward to getting out of the pain and you're constantly avoiding it, then yeah, of course you're going to get fat and overweight and out of shape and, and not physically fit, or your relationships aren't going to be as good as they could be, or, you're just not going to feel as good as you possibly could feel. You're not going to make as much money as you could if you're always avoiding the things that you need to do, right? Yeah. And that's negotiating the price for success. It's victim mentality, right? It's you can't negotiate the price. Yeah. If you have a desire to achieve something, a phenomenal marriage, You want to study the whole New Testament? Like, let's face it, if you're going to study the New Testament for the year, it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have people that say this, or, yesterday I saw someone post on social media saying something about it says in the scriptures that it's easier for a rich man to get through heaven than it is to pass through the eye of the needle. And it sounds like one thing, but most people don't like. It's not actually literally talking about the eye of the needle,
right?
The eye of the needle is actually a location.
Yep.
So if we listen to things and we place value on the opinions without having more information and understanding the right perspective we should have, then it dramatically changes our actions.
Yeah.
So for me, if it's growth, if it was, like hunting, this is a great thing. Like, I've always been like, why would I go hunt, dude, when I can go to a grocery store? I can go to a local ranch. Mm-hmm. I've said this on stage in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And they go, you used to say that, now you're hunting. Because something changed my perspective. Mm-hmm. And that is, one day I went into a grocery store as a multimillionaire, and there was not an item to buy in that grocery store. Mm-hmm. And it changed my perspective.
Yeah.
Because I realized at that moment, no matter how much money I had, I wasn't able to provide for my family food.
You also realize that vegetables weren't for you to eat. They were for the cows to eat, so you could eat the cows.
Exactly.
They just recycled them into meat.
Yep, exactly. Well, that's true too, right? I was a vegan, and now I'm a carnivore. I'm like, how funny is that?
Yeah.
That the full circle happens. But it's also because I've tried to put myself in a position to where I'm willing to grow. So if someone's getting better results at something, then I have to be willing to challenge my belief. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not willing to challenge my belief, then it's not a belief, it's actually programming.
When do you think, or do you think it's possible to push too hard? Where's the limits in anything? You could say physical working out. You could say, working at your business. You could say, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I think pushing too hard is always too hard. I don't think it should be pushing. Actually, I would argue to say that, there's these people.
Can you take it too far? Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, because then it becomes obsessive, right? And then you're living too much in the future or too far away from where you're currently at.
Yep.
Because you can't control tomorrow. Like I always say, what if you die tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Like, look at all these people dropping dead recently.
I know.
Boom, their last day. Or we were just talking about the dude that bought my old house. Home
It's
invasion.
not what everybody thinks it is, though, Jeff. Why everybody's dying.
Come on, man.
Not what everybody says it. Yeah.
Well, we use another one, right? The guy that bought my old house, home invasion, got shot 4 times while he's laying in bed.
Yeah.
Thank
Crazy.
God he lived, but it could have been his last day.
Yeah.
Right. And so he actually posted a story about it. It's like, hey, man, I'm just grateful to be here. Obviously, God has a plan for my life. Mm-hmm. Well, those things change your perspective.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of times people push so hard, and I've been there too. You feel like you're trying to control everything. And the more mature I get and the more I learn, the more people I'm around that are really successful realize there's only one thing you can control, and that's you.
Yeah.
It's the only thing you have control over.
I'll tell you what, man. So we started this martial arts stuff, right? And I was freaking sore after the first one.
Yeah.
And then we went again this last Tuesday. So we've been going once a week so far. We might crank that up to a couple times a week.
Yep.
But I got to work into it because I'm telling you, after Tuesday, I was totally almost immobile the last few days.
Wow.
Like, I don't know what it is, but just my from the guard position, my whole inner thighs and stuff.
Brandon doesn't do thigh master.
I don't do that workout machine at the gym like the girls do. But I need to start. But anyway, I seriously, just so everybody knows out there, I seriously had the thought of, I don't think this is worth doing for me. Like I'm going to quit. I'm not going to quit. But I won't lie to you. I was thinking that I'm feeling pretty good today. I'm kind of getting back into my groove and stuff. And I forced myself to do my 100 burpees yesterday, and it was a little painful, but it loosened me up.
Yeah.
You know? So I think sometimes you got to push hard enough to reach. I mean, I was at my limitation. No doubt, my limitations were there for whatever, just muscles I haven't used ever. And you're taller than me, so it's harder for me to get my legs around you when I'm in that guard position. And I think I'm straining myself a lot, but it's good for me because I need to get the flexibility and the strength and those muscles. So I'm hopeful this week won't be as sore. I'm sure I'll still be sore again.
Yeah.
And I'll just keep working at it.
It's just your perception of the pain, right? Like, why? Yeah. What are you perceiving the pain for? Is growth. So if you perceive it as, hey, this is good for me, it's growth, then you continue to do what? Lean in if you have a goal for growth.
And people would argue, like I couldn't even bend over to pick something off the floor the last few days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm better now, but people would argue, oh, what do you do? That's bad for you. That's bad for your body, right?
Yeah.
Or I was watching like this guy named Cameron Haynes, who's a bow hunter, but he also is a like ultra marathon runner. And people are always making comments, or David Goggins, right? Make comments to those guys. You guys are going to destroy your joints. With David Goggins, you probably argue he has.
Yep.
But Cameron Haynes just like, hey man, it's good for my joints, and he believes that. And I mean, that dude runs a marathon a day, and
well, and who, like, again, this goes back to the opinions of others. Like, who cares what you think you're commenting?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, why do you care about another man's joints?
Yeah.
You know, like
get inspired by it.
Exactly.
Maybe
like,
I could do that.
Cameron Haynes stuff. You go, look at this dude. I mean, he just refuses to stop getting better.
Yeah.
You know, and look at all the experiences he's had. You know, sometimes Cameron Haynes will post, you know, like a reel of, you know, like maybe all his bear hunts in the last 10 years, or you know, all his archery elk hunts, which is, like, to me, like, I mean, you got to be a super athlete to do that kind of stuff.
And it's funny to hear haters go, you don't have to run that far to kill those bulls and stuff. I don't know about that, because that dude kills 2 or 3 or 4 big bulls every year, like every hunt he goes on.
Not only that, they forget about what he's got to go through to get to that place.
Exactly. Like, what he's gone through over the years, right? To get into those connections. And you know, people go, Joe Rogan got to go Cam Haines in the best elk hunting place, just right out of, because I think that's what we're going to talk about, right? Sometimes people think they have the entitlement to just work in and get it. Well, Joe Rogan, he's paid his price and put himself into a position to meet a guy like Cam Haines, to get into bow hunting, to go to these awesome units to where he can kill a big bull.
Yep.
You know, we're going to try to do that this year, by the way, you and I are.
Heck yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that's perfect segue, because, that was on the next note, is most people will come into your life halfway through your journey and think they can cut the line, get in right behind you, and thinking nobody else saw the lack of integrity is not the right word, but I don't know a better word. Lack of integrity or trust in the process. Everybody else sees that if you want to cut the line in front of somebody, that you're not trusting the process of growth. Mm-hmm. You know, and like Joe Rogan has paid the price. I mean, look at what he did to get to where he's at for all of those years. None of that was easy. So just because he got the financial resources and the influence, and now,
that was his path to get there, right?
Yes.
Different than someone else's path, but he paid the price, and that was his path.
And we've talked about that, right?
Yeah.
A destination, right? If you have a destination, there's not only one way to get to that destination. There might be 10 different ways, and the way you think you're going to take is probably going to get closed off en route. And so you're going to end up having to go back and take a different destination. Oh. And that's okay. Right? If your perception about it is good, right? If you really wanted to become this individual, then whatever path you have to take there is okay. It's just, all right, today I got to do this, and I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, and I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow, and eventually I'm going to get stronger, and that becomes easier. And then when it becomes easier, I can increase the challenge. Yeah. And then eventually 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, you know, your physical body might look absolutely incredible. Like Alex Hormozy posted the other day of what he started working out 19 years ago, posted a picture of him in the gym, and then what he looks like today. And he goes, never forget, this is 19 years, you know, and guys want to take a shortcut. And a lot of guys today, you know, like using steroids and, you know, all this kind of stuff to short. And that's fine if that's what somebody wants to do, right? Mm-hmm. If that's how they want to do it. But just know you're not going to have the same result. Yeah. You know, 19 years of discipline, focus, and work to get to a certain place.
Yep. Well, and it's I saw Russell Brunson posted a post the other day and said, true entrepreneurship is somebody who starts with nothing, hustles in the trenches, and builds something, versus somebody who just goes and raises money to start a business. There's 2 ways to do it, right? Yep. But one guy built it from scratch. The other guy, she goes, so true entrepreneurship is the guy who built it in the trenches. And I agree with that. I mean, you can do it either way. Yep. I mean, it's not wrong to do it the other way. Mm-hmm. But I think if you could get yourself into a position where you could get in line when you didn't actually earn it, I just don't think that's as fulfilling to you as a human being as if you actually did the work and built it yourself.
I don't think you'll ever actually feel good enough about it to believe you deserve it to continue doing those things. I think a lot of people, they end up in that situation. They feel like a fake, and then they have a hard time keeping that up, and that's why they get burned out in success, right? We talked about this, us living in a glass house, right? It's just a matter of time before you get burned out if you feel like you're always having to portray this person you're not really. Yeah. You know, it's just a matter of time before you go, man, I just can't keep that up. It's like, I think it was Ian Pruckner said, hey, next time you introduce yourself, please make sure you introduce the real you so you don't have to try to keep up the fake you. You know, because you can only keep up that for so long. And I want to know the real you so we can know if we're going to have a relationship, that relationship is going to last forever, not the fake you. And it only lasts until you can't keep that up anymore.
Yep.
Right. And so you think about those things. And yeah, if you trust the process, if you trust the process and there's someone in your life that inspires you and motivates you, that you don't need to speed up the process to become successful. It's okay if they continue to move forward. In fact, that's a blessing. I used to give this talk that said, we've always been taught duplicate ourselves, but we never actually duplicate ourselves. We duplicate the old us, because if we're actually leading people who are following us that want to duplicate our examples, we've actually moved forward. Mm-hmm. And so this is where the sayings like, hey, leadership is lonely and success, it feels like you're by yourself at the top. Not really. It just, you're constantly moving forward. If you stay and you start hanging out with your peers and stay into the pack, it can be very, right? There's a lot of people around that want to enjoy that with you. But usually leaders have this desire to, all right, we got here, let's move on, right? And then if the goal is duplicate yourself, you're duplicating the old you, because you should have been moving forward. You duplicated yourself, you moved forward. And that's a great thing with anything in life. And, it's that constant growth process. And if you trust in the process, then you feel grateful with everything that you've done. You paid the price, you're doing the right things when nobody's watching. I think the things you do when nobody is watching are more important than the things you do when everybody is watching. What's your perspective on that?
That's good, man. I mean, we've been saying a lot recently, what you doing in private comes out in public eventually. And so, I think, if you're doing all the things you should be doing when nobody's watching, you're going to be as you are when you're in public. I don't know. I think it speaks for itself. I think if you'll focus on just being, then you don't have to worry about trying to make it happen on the outside. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to.
Well, you said it to me the other day. Like we just launched this Solid event. And I'm so excited about the workshop and the experience and stuff. It's going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you said something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing, but you said, man, we're going to change so many lives. And you said something to the effect of, we just continue living the lives we're living right now, continue becoming better men, then we're naturally going to change people's lives. Mm-hmm. But it's the things we're doing when nobody's watching. It's the lives that we live when the cameras aren't rolling, when nobody's recording what we're doing, that naturally create the growth and progression.
I think about it all the time. Like, I'd love to be a fly in your wall in your house just to learn from you, not to be a creep. But just
I do have Vivint, so
and not just you, but anybody who I think has a good family life or is successful. And I think a lot of people they've asked, hey, can I come and shadow you? And I'm like, nobody wants that. I don't want somebody to come, because you can come and see what I'm doing on the outside, but you don't really know what's going on in here and here, other than I guess you kind of do because of who I am, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But I think it's, that's why the reality TV shows and stuff are mostly fake, because they can't be real. I mean, you just can't have a camera there all the time and have it be really authentic.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's hard to keep people's attention too, because usually, it's such a good point, because usually the things that create success are massively boring.
Yep.
Right? They're just this monotonous, everyday, do the same thing over and over and over and over. And it doesn't make good television. It's not interesting.
It's like we go hunting, right? How much time do we spend behind the binoculars and the spotting scope? Hours and hours, and nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. Yep. But we're sitting there like for hours and hours. Yeah. And then when you're watching like a YouTube or of a hunting channel, they'll show some of that. But the like I did this Dall sheep hunt, right? And I tried to do a good job of getting it all. Mm-hmm. But the reality is the majority of it was getting the sheep, getting it off the mountain, hunting caribou, the action stuff.
That's like a small percentage of what actually happened.
Yeah. Exactly. But I love every part of it, because it's the slow times that make the great. You just need that little bit of action to make the whole hunt worth it.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I'll come home sometimes. Kelsey's like, "What'd you guys talk about?" I'm like, "We didn't talk a whole lot."
Exactly.
She's like, "What do you do?"
We did the podcast and left.
Yeah,
it's like Trey Kennedy, right? He does this thing, women going on an outing versus men, and men are like watching football the whole time. And hey, how's Johnny doing with his divorce? Well, I'm not sure. Seems like he's doing all right. What'd you guys talk about? Just asked him how he's doing. He said good.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway.
That's exactly how it goes. I mean, it's funny how that works. Well, I got a couple other topics I want to hit before we're done today.
Yep.
Because I think these are important and they go along with what we've been talking about. I wrote down here that a lot of times we hear that take the 5 people you hang out with most, and then your income is going to be the average of those things, right? And I think there's a lot of truth to that. However, I think that when I was building my business, if I would have done that, it wouldn't have been very good, because the people I spent the most time with were people that wanted to be successful. They were people that I was field training, people that maybe they just had regular jobs and they were making 30, 40, 50 grand a year. And, I was making 50 grand a month. And so I definitely am glad that isn't necessarily the truth. But I do think there is some truth to the statement. I just think it's a little bit off, and it's not you're the average of the 5 people you hang around most, but you're the average of the people you allow to influence you most.
Big difference.
What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, you couldn't have said it more clearly. I mean, if that were true, if you were the average of the 5 people you hung around, where would you be today? Growing up, I mean, you would have stayed in the same situation forever.
Probably in jail, yeah.
You just chose not to allow those people to influence your life when you were younger, and you sought after maybe some instances of some grace too from some people. God put some people in your life and put your boxing coach in your life early on. Yep. And so there was some of that, and you chose to take that opportunity and learn from that person and allow that person to influence you, and not the negative or the bad. You started to see a difference in, if I go this route, this is what's going to happen. If I take this path, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
So it's been the same thing, in my life. I mean, I've chosen to be influenced by those that have good lives, and I really have not allowed people that don't have good lives to have influence on me or over me. Right. I mean, I've never had a drink a beer or done any drugs or anything like that. I've made mistakes, and I've got my shortcomings, no doubt. But just those things were things that I was around. You're in high school, you're around people that do those things, but it wasn't ever a temptation for me, just because I didn't. It really genuinely wasn't. That wasn't right. Just because I made that decision, that wasn't going to be what I was going to do.
Right.
And anyway, and even.
And would you say that's because you placed so during those times, right? Because I think that's awesome, dude. Because I partied a ton in high school. I can't say I didn't, right? And I did a lot of stupid stuff.
Sure.
And I wish I could go back and say, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I can't. Now I'm glad I am where I am today.
You got the experience.
People always say, what would you change? And I wouldn't change anything because I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah.
But at that point, obviously, you were allowing someone or something of massive value to stop you from making a decision that would take you away from that thing or that person or whatever. So what do you think it was? What value, whose opinion, or what was it that you were placing it on?
Interesting, because we started this whole thing talking about not worrying about what other people's think about us. However, in my situation, I was always concerned with what my parents how they'd feel about their son, my grandparents feel about their grandson, and these were stand-up people, and I did care what they thought about me. And so I think in that instance, I think it actually is healthy if they're people that you would like to be like, that you want to look good in their eyes,
Yeah.
And so when I was young, that was it, man. Honestly, like I would think, oh man, what would my grandma think if I did this? Or,
so in other words, reputation was very valuable to you.
Those people.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, that's not necessarily, because I think opinions of others versus how your reputation is dramatically different. And I think it's important for us to differentiate between.
But when I was younger, I probably thought it was their opinion.
Yeah.
I didn't know the difference. So, I mean, but you're right. Yeah. It was yep. That's, yeah.
Yeah, because I think, and when we talk about this, I just wrote down that tools can also be used as weapons.
No.
It's like when we go hunt, we take rifles with us, right? And it's a tool, and it can be used for what we set out to use it for. But we've also seen in the past, right, where people use that same, what we use as a tool, they use as a weapon, right?
True.
And that can be with anything. Like I think anger, people always ask, everybody's always going to have their battle. Different people have different battles, and I've been very honest about mine has been anger in my life, and it's the one thing, and I had to be honest about it to be able to confront it and realize, like, where does it come from? And it comes from, we talked about this earlier, it's about living in your past and allowing your past trauma and all this kind of stuff and having to get rid of it. Well, I don't want to get rid of what happened because I think it gave me a lot of street smarts. It gave me a lot of
lessons.
Because I can go anywhere in the United States and I don't feel uncomfortable or in danger or whatever. You just got to be smart about certain situations. So I want to get rid of that. However, I don't want to hold on to this victim mentality or, oh, woe is me, or this happened, I wish it would have been different.
Sure.
So it can be used as a weapon if you use your past to hurt you emotionally, right? But it can also be used as a tool if you get rid of the emotion behind it and let the knowledge help increase your future, right? Of whatever you desire that to be, or you as a man, you know, so for me as anger is there are times that anger can be a very good tool. If I need to protect my family, I'm okay with confrontation. If I need to protect my family, I'm totally okay. If, I always talk about today, we at Aspen's Gymnastics, we sing the national anthem. It was awesome, dude, and I loved it. I love seeing everybody in there singing the national anthem. People are crying because it just doesn't happen that much in America today. And in our community, I just love it because I'm like, I love knowing that not only am I willing to protect my community, but then there's all these other strong men around me that are as well, and they feel it. You can see them; these grown men crying, just singing the national anthem. They're proud, and that's because they have this tool called the ability to use anger to protect their community, right?
Because it stems from love, that's why, right? Love is the all-encompassing emotion, and if it leads to situations where you need to use anger to defend or protect, then and it's out of love, then I think it's valid, right? If it's coming out of hate, that's probably different.
Exactly. I was just going to say it because there's been in the past where it's ruined relationships for me, and so being able to use that and go, man, I shouldn't have responded that way. I shouldn't have used anger. But it was every problem to me was I just handle it with anger. It was just like I had a hammer and every problem was a nail. Whack, whack, whack. But after a while, you just go, not every problem's a nail. And sometimes you need a different tool.
Right.
Well,
I think too, just the idea of when we're talking about who you allow to influence you, you become the influencer. And what you want to do is you want to be the thermostat, not the thermometer.
Right.
And a lot of times people come into an environment and they'll just adapt to that environment and just kind of melt in there, right? And what a leader will do, and somebody who knows who they are will do, is they will maintain who they are. And if they've got the right energy about them, people will start to bring everybody else up with them.
Yep, they transform the environment.
And we saw that all the time. You did it up in Boise, you did it down in Las Vegas when you built your Primerica agencies. You went up to Boise, there wasn't any environment. You created an environment out of nothing, right? So people would come into the office, you had a standard set, they rose to that standard, and you went to Vegas, and there were some good things going on in Vegas, but you didn't go into any office and just adapt to that environment. You added to it with your by setting your thermostat at a high level, and you raised everybody there, right? And that's if we can always remember that, no matter what situation we'll come in, we'll walk into a room, maybe it's the energy's down. What can we do to bring the energy up? You know, and maybe you walk into a funeral and it's a sad day for everybody. What can you do to maybe bring some joy into that funeral? Just as an example, I mean, you come in and celebrate that person's life versus, and or whatever. And I think, any situation, you get the point. But
I think it's a great point. I think, just remembering that, us as leaders, we have the ability to influence any environment that we're in, but we also have the ability to be influenced by any environment we're in, and we choose what happens there.
Amen.
Right. And if we just remember these tools, like whether it's past experiences or whatever, and we get rid of the emotional trauma from it and use it as tools to grow and get better, then we can move forward, and we're not influenced by others' opinions, but more our reputation allows us to continue to grow, and then eventually it precedes itself, right? Because that's what, like John Maxwell has the 5 levels of leadership, and he talks about level 5 leader is a leader that their reputation precedes them. Nobody has to introduce them. They just walk into the room and everybody knows.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say anything. Michael Jordan doesn't have to claim he's the best.
Yep.
He never says it, right? He doesn't come out and say, I'm the best.
Yeah.
But he's in every argument.
And I'll be honest with you, man, as we're promoting this Solid event, like I feel kind of awkward about it because I never want to be a self-promoter, and that's just not my style. That. And so we're just going to rely on everybody out there. If you feel like you're getting value, maybe you could help us promote it because I'm not the best promoter just because I feel like I'm bragging. But the value we are going to have at this event is going to be, and we're going to have people there that are just doing the right things and not just us. We're going to bring the right people in, and people are going to leave with the tools to go out and, really significantly enhance their life in a big way. So that's, anyway.
I agree, dude. Yeah, I think, and that's, the reason we start the workshop and go, man, let's do an event because, people can listen to a podcast and listen to these tools and it's going to help. But I think getting into an environment with a bunch of like-minded people and being able to get actual tools and practical application, having a workbook that we'll provide where people can leave with a workbook and go, okay, here's what changes I'm going to make, or here's what I'm going to continue doing, or I'm going to get better at. Mm-hmm. Or maybe there's some blind spots that maybe, one of the speakers pointed out that like, I didn't even realize that I could do that or get better at that or that would help in this area or whatever,
And we'll practice stuff there. We'll go, here's what you can do. We're going to practice here today. We're going to practice it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see and feel a difference right there. And then you're going to be able to do that every day. And you're going to see some pretty significant impacts in your life, short term.
Yep.
And long term, it's going to be ridiculous.
Exactly.
So you're going to be at that event, and we have actual things we will do there. You will.
It's going to be life-changing.
It's going to be good.
It is. It's going to be life-changing, man. And I'm excited for those people that decide to commit to it. And then, the experience too. I know we're going to go live here in just a minute, but the experience too, and having people just have that experience of what it feels like to hit a target at 1,000 yards and realize, hey, maybe you never shot a rifle before, but you're able to do that and realize like, dang, I could learn anything. Yep. Like if I could do that, something I've never done before, or maybe you have, but you could learn anything. And then how does it feel to have the confidence that anything I set my mind to or any desire that I have, I actually could accomplish it if I just become the best version of myself.
What I love about doing those types of things with other men and women is you get to see how everybody, I guess, responds. I just acts around each other, just in life, right? And you get a lot. You learn a lot from people out doing things like that, away from a classroom type setting, or us just speaking. Like this is great, but when you have an opportunity to come and we get to spend time with you and you get to spend time with us, we get to learn from each other in ways that you can't learn any other way.
Exactly.
And that's why I think the experience day is going to be, it's going to be a different than the workshop day in a lot of ways. Yeah. And you're going to get a lot out of that you won't get in the workshop.
Right. So it's the difference between being a spectator, being involved, right? And then there's a difference between being involved and actually being a star player, It's like you just watch a World Cup happen.
Yeah.
You see 4 million people show up in downtown Argentina.
Exactly.
They got to lift out Messi in a helicopter. Like, dang.
Exactly.
It's just, being in environments like that, and I think it's going to be amazing.
Example, so with Rolling Bones, we have the Hunt the World podcast, and you'll hear Brian and Brad on there every week. And you get to know them a little bit through that. Yeah. But I've had a lot of opportunities where I've been out with them, out hunting in Alaska and all these different places, and the good, the bad, the ugly, just everything that goes on in hunting, and killing stuff and processing stuff in the field and just being around them and learning from them. And maybe they learn some stuff from me. I don't know, but they definitely learn how to be tougher from me. They're kind of weak, those two, but no, not really. But it's different from hearing them and then being able to go out with them. And the stuff you learn is
you
huge.
See how a leader responds under pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah, and seeing that modeling, and it does. It teaches you how to model behavior when you watch how does this person who I value their opinion and I respect them, how do they respond under pressure? Oh, that gives me a way that I can maybe model that behavior if I like it.
Right. Right.
So yeah, man.
Cool, dude. Well, great topic today, and glad you kind of got us kicked off here. I was wondering what we're going to talk about. We got a lot of things we can talk about, and so it's nice when you have some ideas. So
yeah, for sure. Thank you, dude. I appreciate your time and your knowledge, your wisdom, and doing this today.
You too, man. You're always prepared. I appreciate it.
You bet. You just stay ready. You don't have to get ready, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Thanks, man.